Hey everybody, welcome to Community Wax Podcast, a podcast by a bunch of nobodies interviewing somebodies so that everybody can hear their story. We believe that everybody has a story to tell, and I am so excited to bring you today's interview with Pat Smith.
Community Wax. Community Wax.
How's it going, man?
My life is going so good, and I'm ready to share it with you.
All right. Well, hey, tell us all about young Pat Smith, growing up, where you grew up, where you first maybe saw skateboarding, started skateboarding, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, born and raised there. That's where I started skateboarding and really got into skateboarding, probably seeing some kids at registration for starting sixth grade. They had their boards there. One was a Lester Kasai with a splash graphic, and the other kid had an old Ghost hippie stick. I remember seeing those graphics and just being like, all right, I really need to do this. And then later that same day, I saw those kids olling off curbs and doing frontside bonuses, and I was 100% sold on it after that. And that sparked me, and I was off on a journey. I didn't get a real board for a couple years, but pushed around on some Veriflex boards and lots of Tic Tacs, 360s, and saved up, and had just gotten my BMX Haro Sport bike that I was super into, wanted it forever, and then was like, I'm done riding bikes. Time to get a real skateboard.
Nice. So those they were vision boards, those kind of first ones that you saw, and you saw skateboarding like right there that day. I mean, that was real skateboarding, it sounded like.
Yeah, 100%. And then after that, I saw the first Mark Gonzalez graphic, the graphic that he did not do. And I was like, okay, that's the sickest skateboard. I've got to get that skateboard.
Yeah.
And so went to the, we didn't really have skate shops back then. So I went to the BMX store that also sold skateboards. And I was so pumped to get that. And they didn't have it. So that's when I started making poor decisions in my life and decided to go with the Hosoi ramp model with him doing a lean air. Bought some gull wings with black base plates, mauve hangers, clear grip tape. Just bad decision after bad decision.
Hey.
Had the tailbone on it, everything. So I started skating that, and it felt great, but I just felt like it wasn't the right board for me. So I finally got that Gons after that, and then just you can make that right connection with the board, and I was like, okay, this looks sick. I was just as bad as I was on the Hosoi, but I felt like I knew what I was doing, so that really, really made me feel like, okay, now I'm a skateboarder.
Yeah, I know exactly what Hosoi you're talking about too. My friend, that was his first board, and it's funky shape, huh?
Yeah, it was crazy shape, and like the crazy part about this is when my son Max was born, I bought the exact same complete for him.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but I got indies for him and OJ's this time, so we still have that board in the garage. And
you're like, all right, I had to suffer, so you got to come up this way too. Or
exactly. It was just like, it was rad because that board hadn't been out forever, and it just popped up. And I was like,
yeah,
let's grab this.
That's a sign, man. That's cool. What were some of the first tricks you remember? Where you really felt like, okay, I can actually skateboard, or I'm a skateboarder. Do you remember some of those? Maybe first tricks, or that moment when you felt like, this isn't going to be just like a summer fad, like the Haro or anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt pretty comfortable just cruising around from having older boards and smaller boards. So Tic Tacs, carving, pushing, all that was there. But the first time there was like a major accomplishment, it was my friend and I set a hockey stick down, and we learned how to ollie over the hockey stick.
Oh, nice.
So as soon as the front wheels and the back wheels cleared it, it felt like game on. I'm here. I'm a skateboarder. I mean, and that's over 1/4 of an inch tall and over 1/2 an inch wide. So, I mean, don't feel bad, but I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I think I would agree. When you get that first rolling ollie, it's like, all right, that's now possibilities are opening up, right?
Oh, yeah. And then, equally the feeling of going up a curb and not bouncing the wheels on the back. So, like, I think the ollie was, like, the pivotal maneuver that as soon as, like, it started happening and unlocking other tricks, I was like, all right, this is it.
Was that on the Gons board?
That was on the Gons board.
Oh, nice. All right. Perfect board to learn ollies on. All right. So from there, did you guys start having kind of like a crew that you'd roll around with as you're starting to get into maybe like junior high and high school and times like that?
Yeah, definitely around junior high. There was a crew. I had one friend that I skated with every single day. Shout out to Pete Felipe. And then started branching out and seeing other people, meeting people from Minneapolis, and still getting a wide group of friends. And to this day, I still talk to a lot of them. A lot of those guys still skate. So it was really cool. It's like meeting people that there's no way I would meet in a different city that went to different high schools. So when I was in high school, like the majority of my friends went to different high schools, and we all hung out just because skateboarding. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty solid crew that way. And then we had some older guys. They started getting sponsored. There's some real heavy hitters. One of them's name was Ryan Fabry. We
Heard of that guy?
Yeah, we skated with him all the time. He went on to be sponsored by some smaller company. It wasn't like an A-tier company. It was called Plan B, and he ended up going pro for them. So that was like the first real taste of someone from Minnesota hitting it big on the street scene. So that like got us all just fired up.
Man, I can imagine. I did not know he was from that area. I always associated him with like Arizona, but I guess that's just not like after Plan B.
Yeah, he
is Arizona.
Moved out to California, did his Plan B run, and then moved to Arizona, and that's where he still is. He
Nice.
still skates out there.
Wow. Well, yeah, dude, that's definitely a major influence. Probably somebody too that was going to California and bringing back tricks and keeping everybody current and everything. Cool. Well, so you got your crew, and you guys are progressing and everything. Were there skate shops opening up? Was it starting to kind of become something in the city or in the area?
Yeah, towards the late 80s, it really started to pick up. There's a skate shop that I still go to this day called Cal Surf, and
Yeah.
they'll be celebrating their 35th anniversary on April 1st of this year.
Nice.
So once they opened up, it came like this real big thing, and it's like that's the shop that I'd go to. I remember buying Silver Mike Valet there and really loving that board, going back and getting a neon green one when it came out. So that was like the destination that I would go to for everything. Met a lot of great people there. The owner, Scott, who currently owns it, and it was a really great place. And like that's still where I get the majority of my stuff till this day.
Oh,
So like
it's so rad.
having a core shop like that, like that you just feel familiar with, is like instrumental to just keeping it going.
Yeah. Well, it's important, to support local, of course, and keep that going. Were you trying to get sponsored, or filming, or anything like that, or just having fun with friends?
Really just having fun with friends. We'd film stuff, and there'd be some videos that come out, and then there'd be people that were sponsored, and so they would hand us down stuff and give us flow. So there was no real dreams of other than having fun. And back then, late 80s, early 90s, the shelf life for a skateboard was like after 18, you got a couple more years, and after 21, it's like, what are you doing? So like it was just trying to enjoy as much as I could and have so much fun doing it. And then like who would have known that you can grow up, be in your 40s and still be going and having fun. So there was no blueprint back then. So it was just kind of like, once you're 22, you're like, okay, I'm washed up. It's all going to go downhill, but it doesn't have to. So it was just same as today, just really having fun and get as much as I can.
No, that's very true. So I know that you are a tremendous artist. Did you have any influences back in the day, like you would see Crazy Art and Thrasher or something that influenced you, that you can kind of point to?
Yeah, I think the first thing I saw was the first Mark Gonzalez graphic, which he didn't do, but then seeing the grip tape that he had and the stuff that he would write on there.
Oh, yeah.
It was just crazy. Like him pushing the boundaries even back then. Like that was the first time I saw the word angel dust on grip tape. And I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
So I'd really closely watch him. And I mean, I loved all the graphics that you saw and expected, like all the Jim Phillips stuff from Santa Cruz, all the Powell stuff. It was amazing. But like I would notice the stuff out there that looked different, like Neil Blender's artwork, because I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Or like the Jeff Grosso Jeff Grosso board. Like I was like, oh, that doesn't look like anything else. It's one color. I'm like, that's crazy. So I really loved when I started to see skateboarders doing their own graphics, and I think Ed Templeton doing artwork too was like a real big like eye opener. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I'm like, is that good? Is that bad? I'm like, no, that's amazing. Is that what it is? It's like just crazy. So that really opened my eyes up and like pushed me to want to do what I do for a living. And so I would say that really pretty much any skateboard graphic I've owned and the majority that I've seen were the catalyst to me deciding to be a design influenced career. So yeah, I mean, in the 80s too, you were waiting and waiting to see what would happen with the evolution of like graphics that were serious, a series of graphics like take Rob Roskop's Bullseye target board. Like that started, and then you didn't know what was coming. Nobody knew there was going to be a series. So you get to like 3 and you're like, oh, this is pretty gnarly. That's sick. I can kind of see a robot eye. Then you get to 4 and you're like, that's not what I was expecting. And then you got to 5 and you're like, what the hell just happened? Now there's this gnarly face. But it was crazy because you didn't know. And it was just like a time where a skateboard graphic was something that was pretty huge, because a lot of times back then it was like 6, 8, a whole year before someone would change something.
Absolutely.
Pros would run the same graphic until they weren't pro anymore.
Yeah. I mean, some of those PAL graphics, they probably were in production for years. You know, the shape might have changed a little bit, but, you know, definitely kept the same graphic for 2+ years, it seemed. What do you think now? I mean, do you think companies should do that a little bit more? Like maybe like with the series and the, you know, like, hey, this is, you know, this is like part 1 of the 5-part graphic series. Or would you rather have like what they're doing with like, you know, a whole new series every couple months?
No, it can go either way. It really depends on like the graphics. Like I think what Sean Cliver is doing with Strange Love, like every board looks like it's related to something else, and each one has a story. So you're seeing this unique artwork that just always is cohesive. But then you'll see brands that come out with a series of 4 or 5 boards. And for me, that gets me in like the mindset, like, am I going to collect it or do I want to skate it? And I'm guilty of having a huge collection of wall hangers, but intentionally they all wanted to be boards that I thought were just rad and was going to skate. So it's like, as long as it's like a good shape and you like the graphic, I think probably like the one and done is probably the way to go. And then if they start relating to each other back and forth from something that came out there, that's always cool. But like my favorite's always going to be some sort of spoof or something that pays homage to something.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with the Sean Cliver thing. I like how the graphics do have a story. I wish more companies would give a little bit of that background, because I'm sure all the graphics, you know, have a story, an inspiration or something. You know, I think it would serve these companies well to share a little bit of like, hey, here's why we're doing the Garbage Pail Kid ripoff series, or, you know, whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, speaking of those boards, that was a crazy time. Like I remember breaking, I think 3 different ones of those boards within a week. But it's like had to have a blind board. Anything after, let's say, Hocus Pocus, which I want to say was like 87, really ignited just like forward momentum and progressing and just like going crazy until about like 92. So it was like everything was going, same crew. All these different tricks were getting unlocked. It felt like there was no stopping. And then we started doing shove it, late flips, pressure flips, and the boards got smaller and smaller and smaller. So like between 93 and 95, I want to say there was like really no progression and like a slowdown in the love of what was going on for me. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to kind of just like do it less and less and then just wait it out. And I'd start getting phone calls from friends like, hey, are you going to go skate? And like the answer is always going to be yes when someone makes the phone call. So just staying with it. And then slowly the board started getting wider again. And I remember when like an 8-inch board would come out, I was like, this is a miracle. This board's huge. I can't believe this is back. It's amazing. So there was kind of like that lull from after 92 to like 95. Kind of just, it was always there, but like just kind of slowed down and then it picked up again.
Yeah. I've seen some Minneapolis videos.
A couple different islands, and so those are all within like a 2-block radius. And there used to be, it's still there as the Federal Reserve building, but it was called the Black Tubes, and it was like a 6 set of stairs, curbs to skate, and then they probably went up several hundred feet, embankment that you just roll down and do all these crazy stuff. So that was basically like our Embarcadero back in the day.
Oh,
and
man,
like, saw like Steve Nesser come up there, Ulu Pratt, Clint Peterson, so many Minneapolis locals, Rob Cece, like all the guys that I grew up skating with, just ripping that place. So that was like a huge thing. But you'll still to this day, you can see videos of people in Minneapolis still skating the Fed and the courthouse. Like it's a staple. So yeah, really tight community, and like within like a couple mile radius, you've got probably 10 sick spots.
Oh wow. I would presume like those were like Sunday spots, right? Like when it's not a bust, or maybe weekends.
Weekends, for sure, and then lots and lots of night skating too. So you think about it as like a highly commerce-driven area. Everything closes down 5 or 6, and then no one's really watching those buildings. So and security guards, sometimes they were lazy, so they would just take their time, or they were cool. I shouldn't say security guards are lazy. They're all super cool, and they just let us skate.
Yeah,
but yeah, definitely lots of night sessions and weekends for sure.
Cool. Yeah, man, it looks fun. So, you mentioned a bunch of, skaters that we've probably all heard of that were, locals at the time, probably still are, moving back and forth and everything. Was there any, like skaters or skater that was more of an influence than others on, say yourself and your trick selection and, everything about skateboarding?
Yeah, definitely. There was like, you'd get used to everyone's style and hang out with them. So it was really cool when someone would move from a different part of the country. And I remember there was this group of 3 guys that showed up one time at the park, all wearing striped Gap shirts, not looking like anybody else. And we were like, there's that 1 second where you want to vibe them, and there's that second where you wait to see what they can do so you don't look like an idiot. And I'm glad I waited, because these guys came from Florida, and they were hanging out with Scott Conklin. So they had all these East Coast Florida tricks, shove it, late pivots, shove it, nose manual, shove it, stuff we'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And they were super cool. And so they would end up going out to the East Coast and go to Florida and then bring back all these tricks. So it was like not even just hearing the word of mouth that somebody did this and you're like, yeah, right, that didn't happen. Actually seeing them learn them there, then bring them back and sharing with us. So that was like just changed like a total style of skating. And then I would say like everybody in the Minneapolis scene, like when I started getting back into it, probably around 2003, 2004, just learning from those guys and hanging out with them and seeing what they were doing in their prime, like Mike Munzenreiser, Benji Meyer filmed pretty much every one of the greatest videos that came out of Minneapolis. So being able to be with him and watch him film some of the stuff, I'd see crazy stuff. So like there's Steve Nesser, obviously, Clint Peterson, Andy Paulson goes by A+, super creative, all those guys. Like even Davis Torgensen as a little kid until he went pro and just blew it away. So it was super cool to be a little bit older and see all these guys that were like 5 to 10 years younger than me, just killing it and seeing what they were doing. And I was just like, okay, this is eye-opening. This makes me just want to have fun again. And then just realizing like you're not going to do what they're doing, but if you can pick something from their doing or their style or part of a trick they're doing and bring it into your own catalog, that's what really opened up the door for me again. Just like, oh, okay, I'm having fun.
Man, that's so rad. So, so talk a little bit about that. You mentioned the 2000s and everything. Obviously, you moved to Texas and everything, but did you move straight from Minneapolis, St. Paul to the Texas area, or was there stops in between, or what?
Nope, it was let's see, 2000s, early 2000s, like a lot of skating with friends. Moved here December 31st. 2018. So really I've only lived in 2 cities in my life, and they've both been capital cities. So St. Paul, Minnesota, and then moving down here. Didn't really know anybody. I'd been to like No Comply once or twice. Talked to some of my friends in the industry, and they're like, okay, we'll hook you up with some guys that you could know. And so just moved down here and really didn't know anybody. So I'd been to this park on vacation a couple times and just started showing up here, and my son would come with me. So I remember coming up here and just rolling around with him, just getting a feel for it, and actually seeing you here, I was like, hey, there's another dude that looks like he's a dad, and not talking to you, and then you just rolling around. I'm like, oh, he's probably just getting back into it. And then watching you throw down a kickflip and some sick manuals, I'm like, oh, I want to go talk to this dude. So yeah, you were pretty instrumental and super friendly and welcoming, and like you're like the first skateboarder that I met down here and helped me unlock some doors and meet the crew that we have now. So super appreciative of that, and like keeps it going all the time.
No, I understand how important a crew is, because I've talked about it before. It's there were times where I was only skating like maybe once a month for just like an hour or so because I didn't know anybody else, especially older, you know, so going to the parks was kind of awkward. But once I started connecting, like you said, with other, you know, parents or dads or just older dudes and everything, then that helped not only motivate me, but get me out more, you know, like, hey, yeah, let's all meet up and stuff. So I think, you know, having friends and other people to skate with, of course, is pretty important, you know, because if we just did it by ourselves, I don't know how fun I would do it, you know.
Oh, 100%. And then so we've got such a good crew going right now. It used to be like I'd wait for a text and get excited if someone's like, anyone skating today? And now it's to the point where you show up here, you know there's a crew Saturday, Sunday, and mix in a weekday. And so it's like, it's 3 days a week now for me every week. And it's just like, that's just what it is. It's like no thinking about it. Like, oh, can I skate this week? I'm just like, nope, that's what I do. Like, I don't golf. I don't do any of that stuff. So I'm like, all right, I'm going on the weekend. I'm gone for 4 or 5 hours at a time, and that's just like, that's my happiness.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Let's talk a little bit about growing up in the Minneapolis area and the influence of Prince.
Yeah. I think as far as Prince is concerned, it was just someone that you loved. It started back in the day. It was Michael Jackson and Prince, and then you just went one direction. I went Prince. I remember having Purple Rain and I think 3rd or 4th grade and asking a teacher if I could play it and playing Darling Nikki because I knew it was bad. But I didn't know why it was bad, so I played it and then got in trouble and got the song explained to me. So I knew that it was kind of a reckless thing, so I loved it after that and was just a huge Prince fan. But Prince was always just like part of Minneapolis. You'd hear stories of people spotting him. And so like you'd go to a Prince concert, or later on he had Paisley Park where he'd have open sessions and you could just show up there and check out music, and it was usually super, super late at night, and sometimes he would just appear and play guitar or jam on the piano. So he was just always like something that you loved, and then as you got older you realize it's just part of you, and it just sort of started showing up in skateboarding. I think Todd Bratcher did a Strange Love. It was actually Paisley Skates when it first came out with this crazy Prince graphic of him being carried through a crowd, like body surfing.
Yeah.
And then he passed away right after that. And Prince just started showing up everywhere. But yeah, his style was always something in Minneapolis. It was like totally different, and that's what made him. And so you just kind of felt a little connection closer to it. I mean, you have to admit he's different than anybody ever in the world, and best Super Bowl halftime show ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
I agree. No, that's awesome, man. So going back to bringing the record to school, did the teacher let you play the whole record or just the one song?
I just picked Darling Nikki because I thought that would be as far as I could go.
Right.
And that was as far as I could go.
And then who ended up explaining it to you? Was it the teacher, your parents, the principal?
Oh, I think it was my teacher, Sister Helen Thomas, who was probably my favorite teacher ever. And she didn't get into great detail, but she told me that was like personal stuff, and sometimes people explore themselves in different ways. And then when I'd get older, I'd understand it a little bit better.
Oh my gosh.
She was right.
Oh gosh. That's rad. Pat, you know, you've got awesome trick selection. You do a lot of unique tricks, impossible variations, nollie variations. What were some of the influences that made you really kind of gravitate towards those tricks, and also maybe video parts that you really enjoyed watching, you know, that kind of would get you stoked to try what you know, some of the tricks you do?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when I fell in love with the Impossible, but I'm 99.9% sure it was watching Ed Templeton do them, and just the way he did it, it was like such a stylish trick. I'd seen it done in freestyle before, the way he would pop them, and just it looked like it was something that was not going to be happening anywhere around me. So I was like, I'm going to learn that trick. And I made the decision way back when I was I remember the first one I did was on a red Jim Thiebaud SMA deck that had illustration of all these.
The Joker?
It wasn't the Joker one. I think Nodis did the graphic, and there was a giraffe at the top of it.
Yep.
And it had the different storyboards. It had the superhero from the Joker board. And I still remember doing that. And then I started doing nollie tricks. I remember there was a demo that H Street came to town, and Sal Barbier was there, and I watched him do nollies over the spine, and I learned them that day just because it looked like such a fun trick. And I've always just loved that trick and anything nollie because it doesn't feel right, and then it feels super good, and then you're happy that you did it. So anything off the nose just feels really good for me.
Yeah.
And like video parts, I started like everybody else, Powell videos, and then Santa Cruz Streets of Fire, and Nodus and Gons were my hero forever. And then everything changed when the 8th Street videos came out, and those are just like all of a sudden felt like someone had moved you 10 years into the future. But I really remember Planet Earth, Now and Later, and Brian Lottie's part in that, and Javante Turner's were like 2 of the game changers.
Yeah.
Still can watch those, and if you haven't watched them, I recommend getting it and checking out Now and Later by Planet Earth.
Yes.
Just the style, the tricks, and they were so amazing, but they were on small ledges or curbs, so they seemed totally feasible. And like, I still love both of those skaters. Anytime I see them pop up on Instagram, if it's art or just popping up and seeing anything, I get just as hyped as when I was a little kid. And then really, New Deal videos were crazy. 8th Street videos were amazing. And then once World started putting stuff out, like Love Child was just like a game changer.
Yeah.
Especially that last minute and a minute and a half of Jed Walter's RIP, and that song, and seeing the song, and the first switch tray flips I can remember, and like the world's most perfect kickflip. That was the kind of video I was just like, okay. And then videos became less of a thing, and I was just trying to emulate and going out, because I was seeing a lot of my friends doing everything that was in the video. So I felt like you were part of it. And a lot of those guys went on to have pretty illustrious careers and are still skating today. So it was just like, instead of watching all the videos, you were just out there with them, and it just felt like you could be part of it, and you could ask the questions, you could feel that real-time stoke. So it's kind of like my video history. And then everything after that was just pretty amazing, and just like, you can't even fathom it. And like, I really, really loved the part of, like, one of my favorite skaters ever is Jeremy Klein, just because he did exactly what he wanted and still does.
Yeah.
And seeing the way he took his skateboarding, and towards the tail end of his career just reinvented himself. In the end, him and Keith is still one of my favorite parts, because he's doing whatever he wants. There's no rules, bringing things to where they shouldn't be, touching obstacles that shouldn't be touched, starting yourself on fire just because it's fun.
Yeah.
And, setting an all-around bad example and being reckless. And that's one of my favorite things about skateboarding. Be respectful, be kind, but just be dangerous and have as much fun as you can.
It's not a safe, safe, cozy type of activity, right? Like, you're going to bleed, if you stick with it. It's just a fact of it. And you're, likely going to get hurt. But the reward, I think, is worth it, so.
Oh, without a doubt. Like, today I was driving here, and I was like, man, I haven't slammed in a long time. I'm like, I think I'm going to slam today. And then I was just going up to the quarter pipe and just going to just do a little tiny nollie rock to transfer out, and didn't even make it up there. My nose just said, no, you're going to stop, and you're going to slam, and it's not something that should hurt you. But my arm got a little ripped up, and I was like, yeah, I could feel that coming. And then you just get back up and do the exact same thing, and then it's over.
Wow. I've never thought to myself, I want to slam.
Oh, I didn't.
I haven't slammed in a while.
I did not want it. I was like, I haven't slammed in a while. It's probably happening today, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was like, then I started thinking about it, and it didn't, and then it did.
I get that. If I think like I haven't slammed in a while, I usually think to myself, like, I probably haven't been pushing myself, enough in a while, because just getting too comfortable. So probably need to push myself a bit more, and take some falls,
100%.
It's part of it. So you talked about videos. You talked about a few people. Was there any specific part, like if there's one part you would watch maybe before going skating, whether it was then or now? Anything come to mind?
I mean, there'll never not be a time when I watch Guy Mariano's part from Blind Video Days, just the Jackson 5 there. Stuff he was doing, I'll even go back and see it now and be like, oh man, I can't believe he was doing that back then.
Yeah.
And it was just such a game changer, because you went from watching the 4 LA skaters come out of the Powell videos, and then seeing Guy on Blind and Rudy on Blind and everybody in the World Camp, Gabriel RIP, one of the best to ever do it. And just anytime Guy is in there, it's so amazing. And then you bookend it, and now thinking about Fully Flared coming on, 2007, how long ago that was. But like Guy's part and Blind Video Days, and then him and Fully Flared coming back and having that 2-song part, and just seeing him on top of his game was just like, yeah, that magic was there from the first time you see it. And it's like, anytime I see a Guy clip on IG, anywhere, it's just always like him being one of the true legends. So any Guy part's always blown my mind.
What would you say is kind of like your inspirations now in either, art creative stuff or skateboarding, all that? What do
Yeah,
you-
art-wise, it's crazy. It's like Todd Bratchard's probably one of my favorite artists ever to exist, and he's from Minnesota. And like watching him work with Sean Cliver at Strangelove and do boards, like seeing two of my favorite artists doing that, and I see those, that just makes me happy. It's like a kid getting a comic book whenever I see those graphics come out, and just seeing older cats on the internet, what they're doing and being involved in skateboarding is like super inspiring. Like, love listening to Clyde Singleton and like how awesome his life is going and how he shares all these great stories on his podcast. But even better, watching him just bust someone's balls and talk shit back to him in the comment sections makes me super happy.
Yeah.
And just like seeing, people like Ted Barrow out there and just that's involved in art and professional but still 100% about skateboarding. So it's like there's so much that you can get out there, or you can just watch reels that people forward you of kids you've never heard of, and it blows your mind. So it's like anytime you want it, you flip on your phone, anywhere you go, it's right there. So it's like skateboarding, family, and artwork. And the artwork is like what I do. It's always going to be inspired by skateboarding. So like I try to pull any of that I can, even if it's for a corporate job, and take that same energy and balance it. So
yeah,
it's always there no matter what I'm doing.
That's sick, man. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Pat, for everything. And looking forward to skating some more.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything you do, Brad. Everybody around here appreciates it. All the kids that you hook up with decks that need them, keeping the skate park clean so it doesn't go unnoticed, and we all appreciate what you do. Thanks,
All
Brad.
right. Thanks, man. See ya. I also want to give a huge thank you to some of the Texas skateboarding podcasts that inspired me, like The Wood and Droppin' in Texas. These podcasts are run by awesome people doing awesome things, and I encourage you to check them out. I also want to give a huge shout out to the Austin band American Sharks for letting me use their music as part of a theme song. Please go check them out, check out their music, check out their shows, everything. Help support them. They are awesome people.